Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com. Well, in our last video in this series, we did the 5 last great European composers. And I thought I was pretty clear about what that meant. And a lot of you really had no idea what it meant. And we got all kinds of crazy stuff from later modernist type composers who really didn't belong on the list, like Lutoslawski and Penderecki and Messiaen, and come on, guys. Seriously. Anyway, now we are doing the sequel. Maybe this will clarify the whole shape of my thinking here. The 5 first great Anglo/non-European composers. Now, the Anglos have to be part of the non-Europeans, not just because of Brexit, but because English music was always a thing apart. Historically and stylistically. And it wasn't until the 20th century that the English Romantic Nationalist school, which you might call, sort of got going. And got going in a way which was quite different from what was happening in Europe. It doesn't mean that there weren't English composers who were just as awful as the European avant-garde. Of course there were. But there was also a stronger thread of composers who were modern, but not European traditionalists, because that had passed in Europe. So England is on the list, and so is the rest of the world. What happened essentially, and I actually believe this is historically pretty much true, is that Europe died, Central Europe, the basic Central Europe, axis of Germany, France. Russia was part of France, and Italy, and they all kind of sort of passed the baton, let's just say. And they passed the baton to England, the United States, South America, and other places. And so here are the 5 first great Anglo/non-European composers. And you can add your own if you'd like. First, Vaughan Williams. A lot of you wanted him on the last list. He doesn't belong on the last list. He belongs on this list. He was really one of the very, very first. Of course, he had a very long life, but his style is English modern. It's not late romantic, and it's not consistent with what else was going on in Europe at the time. So Vaughan Williams definitely gets on there, and he died in 1958. This group, essentially overlaps the previous group, you see. While the European crew was dying off, the Anglo non-European crew was getting going, and it was all happening at the same time, more or less. Then we've got Copland, who died in 1990. Now, Copland's very interesting because he was America's greatest composer for much of the first half of the 20th century, at least the United States' of America's. And he was a disciple, of course, of Stravinsky and Nadia Boulanger. And that's a whole very, very interesting topic, because the Nadia Boulanger students and crew was largely not French. French music was doing other things. And so everybody was going to chat with Nadia Boulanger. It was teaching a whole new crowd of composers, but not French. So that's, I think, a fascinating phenomenon. Then Heitor Villa-Lobos. Oh, yes, the great Brazilian, who also died in 1959. Vaughan Williams was 58, and Villa-Lobos was 1959. And he, of course, spent much of his early career in France. That was his proximate influence, but did his own thing after that. And, of course, works such as the Bachianas Brasileiras and the Choros and all of these things are just so absolutely wonderfully new and fresh and unique and amazing and terrific. So he's definitely on the list. Benjamin Britten, of course, because he put opera in English back on the rails. Of course, Gershwin could have done it with Porgy and Bess, except, good old United States, of course, treats all of its composers with total contempt, and its artistic legacy with utter indifference. And so Gershwin's Porgy and Bess was treated as a musical instead of an opera, and looked down upon for all of those reasons. Britten, on the other hand, was a serious, major opera composer, but even he didn't really get going until Peter Grimes, which was around 1946 or something like that. I mean, it was in the 40s. It was very, very late. But because of Britten, largely because of Britten, opera in English became a thing again. And he was the start of that marvelous trend, and really a composer of genius. Of course, there's all kinds of other wonderful goodies that he wrote, but the operas are the big deal. And he died in 1976. And last but not least, well, Charles Ives. Charles Ives, of course, was so sui generis. I mean, he was such a unique and iconoclastic kind of guy. He's sort of hard to pigeonhole, but he was, without a doubt, an American original. And in his music, you can see the transformation from the sort of traditionalist school to the non-European modernist school, because Ives' relationship to to the European history, to the tradition, to all of these things that he learned and was, on the one hand, honoring, but on the other hand, rebelling against, was so clear and so graphic and so much fun to just trace. It's all there, like in neon lights. He goes from being a conservative Yaley to being a wild-eyed insurance salesman, composer type. And so those are the 5 first great Anglo/non-European composers. Let's see if you can get into this sort of thought process and come up with some more, because I can think of a few, and I'm sure you can too. So keep on listening, friends. Thanks so much for joining me. Take care.